evening, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you are catching us. I am Maria Cosme, also known as Brown Girl Interrupting, and this is Pain to Power. We are the show where we are taking our struggles and turning them into strengths and learning tools to build and heal in community. And I love it. Shout out to Kevin from my Substack family. Welcome, Kevin. So glad you're here. And shout out to the iRant Network, we are brought in association with. And please make sure, if you haven't done it yet and you're new here, subscribe, hit the bell, and like, share a comment. And if you're here with us live, make sure you're in the chat because I am so excited about today's guest. The show today is all about the power of forgiveness. And I have been, for some time now, as you all may know, is launching my courses on Empowerment Unlocked. And really what it is about socialization. So when we talk about our socialization, forgiveness, we are socialized to do many things with forgiveness. And I'm going to tell you, if you're like me and you are in your healing space and you have done the work, you know what's harmed you, you know how to take your own accountability, but maybe you're hitting a wall when it comes to forgiveness. It's a hard one. So today, I'm very excited to introduce my guest, Dionne Nicholls-Germaine, who is transforming lives by embracing the healing power and strength in forgiveness for others, for ourselves, and in professional spaces. She's the author of the 90-Day Conquering Unforgiveness Journal, the Chief Forgiveness Officer. I love that. Of Live Your Best Life for You, a personal development, leadership training, and speaking business serving an international clientele dedicated to supporting executives and entrepreneurs to reach their full potential and excel at work, at home. And she is one of the dynamic speakers who we will be seeing at the Shift 2.0 conference on October 11th, which you're all going to be there to enjoy and see. Welcome, Dionne.
Thank you for that amazing intro. It always takes me aback every time I kind of hear the words, but thank you. That was wonderful. Good to be here.
Well, it is lovely to have you here. And truthfully, that is a lot that you are doing that with the power of forgiveness. I'm excited for our conversation to learn more about all the things and all the tools that we can walk away with today. So I always open up my show asking my guests what for them turning pain into power is. How would you define that for yourself?
For me, it is it's impact. It's more light and more love in the world. Something that could have really, took me a very different path is now a conduit, a vessel of healing, of possibility. So yeah, that's what it means to me. Limitless possibility.
I love that. Limitless possibility. And then there's so much opportunity. And the way you framed it was in so much positivity, love, and light and impact. So it's so much bigger than us, which is so important. And I would love to hear a little bit about just your own story. And since we're talking about forgiveness today, tell me a little bit about what you've learned or been socialized to think about when it comes to forgiveness, maybe before you even started this journey that you're currently on.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, I come from a Caribbean background, for one. And I will say culturally, it's just not something that's really talked about, much less modeled in a way, because I mean, I really don't remember, throughout my childhood ever really having my mom or my dad sit down with me and maybe actually acknowledge maybe a breakdown and apologize for their mistakes, or even just seeing family members really sit down and go through a restorative process of forgiveness. I can't recall. On the whole, there's a lot of, how do I say it? Like, ego, if you will, especially in the men, the bravado. So I never really saw
Mhm.
vulnerability, if you will. Many times we're talking about each other, but not actually talking to each other if there is some
Mhm.
kind of riff in the family. So for me, that's sort of what I saw. It's more about holding on to the grudge or not actually really dealing with it ever, and maybe just sweeping it under the rug.
Mm. Mm.
That's what I could say I learned about forgiveness growing up.
And that's really powerful because I think your story is not so unfamiliar to many people's stories of what we've learned about forgiveness. And I love how what you elevate is the fact that it has to truly be taught to us to be done effectively and in a way where it heals. And oftentimes we don't. You're taking me back to when I used to tell my children, I had like a list of this is what you say when you apologize. And this is what, this is the script and the process. But the truth is, have you forgiven? Like we teach people sometimes how to apologize, but do we teach people how to forgive? So tell me at what point you started to interrupt those own messages for yourself to be able to forgive.
Interestingly enough, I don't know where along the way in my childhood I picked this up, but in my adulthood, as I one sort of began my own healing journey as a coach, going through the training program. You think you're just getting trained to help other people, but no, you have to do the work first. So a lot of kind of bringing down a lot of those masks and limiting beliefs, if you will. But really and truly, when I had to walk it out, literally, you're always given an opportunity to practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was really when, unfortunately, I was in a 17-year relationship with my college sweetheart. Uh, we actually have a beautiful son together. But about 10 years in, I unfortunately found out that he was stepping out on the relationship. And it didn't just happen once. And it was when I was actually 5 months pregnant with our son that I found out and confronted him. And of course, he promised it would never happen again, but it did. And at one point, I mean, I really wanted us to have a two-parent household. I didn't have that growing up. I really wanted my son to experience that. And at one point, because I did forgive, and at one point, a few years later, I'd find out he actually had a secret child that he would
Mm-hmm.
tell me about, that rocked me to my core. And I still chose forgiveness. As you can see, it's when you're in it that you
Mm-hmm.
really find out, what you're made of, and can you really apply it in real time. And I did, and we actually created a really beautiful blended family. Did a really great job of that. Um, Although sadly, the infidelity didn't stop. And it was when I got an email from a woman. And at that point, the whispers were already, like I said, getting louder. You know
Those
when you just, as a
internal.
woman, especially that inner voice, that
Mm-hmm.
intuition. But when I got this email, I remember at that point, I remember replying to her and saying, "Thank you. This is the
Mm.
first day of the rest of my life."
Mm.
And in this particular situation, it doesn't always look the same. So I just want to put that out there in terms of forgiveness. But in this case, somehow intuitively, I knew for me to actually create space for the good love that I believed I was worthy of,
Mm-hmm.
for me to, and I was sort of in this stage in my life, I was approaching 40 and I was already contemplating what my next would be. I had been working in fashion for over almost 20 years at that point, and I felt like I was being called to do more. Didn't know quite what it was yet, but if I'm going to make room for that chapter, I knew I had to forgive. And above and beyond all of that, I knew what I was committed to, and that was my son's well-being. That he would know, whether we were together or not, that he had two parents that loved him and had his back, that we would be a united front.
Yeah.
And because I chose to forgive through that lens of my commitment, we were able to create a really, really healthy, loving, and supportive co-parenting relationship.
And for everyone who's ever been divorced and has children, that is the dream. Right? For your children, that is the dream. And I can speak from personal experiences that it's not always easy. And so, you talked about almost these two different eras of forgiveness, right? You had your era while you were married and you were forgiving many times, right? For many things that harmed you. And then there's this moment after the email where you make a different choice in the forgiveness. Tell me a little bit about the difference in the ways you were approaching forgiveness between those two moments in your life.
Yeah. So I would say in the first situation, I am forgiving, right? In the sense that I'm still committed to something greater, and that was my family, right? Um, However, the after the email, it was forgiving because actually for me to be free, healthy, whole, to really be able to grab on to what my future destiny, has for me, is why I want to make room. I actually was trying to make room for more. So by releasing the negative emotions, those hard emotions, the anger, the rejection, the betrayal, the disappointment, I could keep going.
Mhm.
I'm going to make room for all of this newness in my life, all the good that I'm expecting. I've got to make room. And I would say that's the difference.
I love that because I think it comes to a quote that I pulled from you and your work, which is forgiveness is not about them, it's about you. So it sounds like this second era and really the one that sustained you and taken you on the path that you are now helping others with this whole guide and building tools to be able to know how to forgive with this liberation is so powerful.
Yeah, and that word right there, I love that you use the word liberation, because forgiveness is a conscious choice. It's a deliberate
Mhm.
act. It's not a feeling. It's a very active process. And that
Mm.
word alone, deliberate, if you get into the meat of the word, for those who love, you know,
Wordsmiths.
and all,
Yes.
yes, deliberate actually means to liberate when you get really down to it, from the Latin. So yeah, when we choose or are deliberate about choosing forgiveness, we are liberating ourselves.
And that's a very powerful stance to take with forgiveness, right? It's liberation, but in that, it's not easy. It's not easy, right? And you and I had this conversation because I think it's even harder to forgive when there is an active harm occurring. So there's one when it's past harm to forgive someone, but active harm is also a thing though, right? And I think that what you say is this idea of recognizing that it's for you, but how do I go through the steps and how would I, and not just me, I'm just saying, like, I mean, although me, I could use this, right? Like we are having a coaching session here for certain as well. But I think my audience could also, right? There's so many people here. We hold on to this forgiveness, and I think or we hold on to the pain, and there's many different reasons. Like I can think people don't forgive, right? Sometimes it's the fear of the response of someone. If you do forgive, do I lose my power in this relationship? If I forgive them, do I now show weakness? Right? If I forgive them, is that allowing their behavior to be okay? Right? Like there's so many things. So, how do we work through those complexities of the human side of not just, yes, I can forgive, but what does that really feel like going through it?
Well, thank you for bringing all of that up because I actually wrote a book called The 90-Day Conquering Unforgiveness Journal for high performing high achievers, although anybody can use it. And at the very beginning, that's what I get into is debunking all of these myths, these limiting beliefs that
Mm.
get in the way. So we have to start there. What did you learn? What
Mhm.
um, limiting beliefs? And when you really get into it, underneath it all stems back to fear and pride.
Mm. So tell me more about that.
Sure. So either we're afraid of letting them off the hook, right? That's a big one. If I forgive, and that is a myth, but it's a lot of the thing that blocks us from actually releasing that debt so we can move on. But no, that's not the case. But we've been conditioned to believe so. Pride. Um, if I, because so many times we think that the anger and the resentment is protecting us, and
Mm.
I want to be right about it. Right? And so
Mm.
we think that's hurting them if I just hold on to this thing and be right. Meanwhile, that's the very thing that's actually hurting and killing you in the end, silently. We don't realize
Mm.
mentally, physically, and spiritually, we are harming ourselves every time we don't forgive. And
Mm.
I use the extreme example. What if that person has passed away and
Mm.
we're still harboring this stuff? It's only hurting us because we in this case we'll never get the apology, but we have to find a way to learn to forgive so we can be healthy, whole, and free. So, yes, that's another example. It feels very vulnerable, as you said, to forgive, right? So, the fear of that vulnerability. Um, Another one is, well, forgiveness automatically means reconciliation,
Mm. Mm.
is the case.
Mm.
Forgiveness actually requires one person, reconciliation requires two.
Mm.
There may be situations where it's not safe, even to have this person in your life. So forgiveness may require boundaries, right? So it's shifting, getting a wider understanding of that forgiveness doesn't only look one way, right? There's many forms of forgiveness, and one of them could be reconciliation and restoration, but not always.
I appreciate that you showed the difference in those two because oftentimes we can convolute them, right? We think they're the same, and again goes back to fear and pride, and I think as you were talking about the fear, I was like that is kind of our pride, isn't it? That puts us in that fear mode of we've released control, but why are we trying to control things, right? That goes back to letting go often, right? And so we have these mindset shifts at the start of this book, but tell me, what else are people going to find? And I think we're probably going to have some images come up soon, hopefully, of the book to see what we're looking for in your book. What other skills and tools can people look forward to and seeing in the 90-day Conquering Unforgiveness Journal?
Sure. So the way I structured the book, as we know, 30 days to create a habit, 90 days to create a lifestyle. So that's what I wanted to create for people. How do we make this a daily mindfulness practice? So it's actually guided prompts, morning and evening. Uh, I'm sure you use this a lot in your content. The power of reflection when we get things out of our heads and onto the paper.
Mm.
Because the longer it's ruminating in here, right? And that's something else you're going to learn about in the book, this concept of rumination, where you just keep replaying the same thing over and over again. And if we're going to bring in some neuroscience, which I do touch on in here as well, it's like it's the pain, the lever in your brain. It's the same pathway of pain if you were actually putting your hand on a hot stove over and over again. It's like reliving
Mm.
that incident like it's just happening over and over again. And you're releasing those negative toxins into your body. So,
Ooh.
yeah.
You're containing it. You're containing and it's festering.
Yes.
So when you release by the writing, and you're very right, you're speaking my language, reflection.
Mhm. Yeah.
Reflection
Yeah.
and writing, very much so. And hopefully those who will join me in my course, you will feel and experience that in this process. And yes, but I I that is a really important step that you're elevating there in that release. I love a connection to neuroscience.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit more because it's not just the 90-day and Conquering Forgiveness Journal. You also mentioned it's for high achieving and high perfect. Let me see. I wrote it down. High achieving and high
Yes. High performing,
high
high
performing
achievers. Yes.
individuals. So tell me a little bit about what like how do you connect this, because we're talking about personal experiences, and I'm a woman who was married for 17 years and divorced, and it's been, and very publicly in my writing and in my show, why I even created it was because of the pain that was caused by it, right? So we openly can connect that, but where do you connect high achievement and high performance to
Mhm.
forgiveness? Tell me this bridge.
Sure. Any high performing high achievers in the house? Any recovering perfectionists?
Put it in the chat, folks. Be honest. Come on, this is a
Yeah,
vulnerable space.
I mean, as an executive coach, so yes, there's the personal testimony, right? But I also realized working with leaders and founders around the world, doesn't matter if they're in the C suite, on the front lines, India, the UK, Italy, male, female. I just kept hearing the same themes over and over and over again, that either they don't want to speak up in a meeting unless they are 155% right.
Mm,
Because if I'm wrong, I'm going to beat myself up for weeks. So, how productive am I? Okay, so that's one. Um, I am either going to disaster thinking or imposter syndrome starts
mm,
its ugly head,
that's a big
right?
one.
Because I'm so hard on myself, I don't believe I'm good enough. Or they're going to find out I don't belong here and I'm going to
Mm,
get fired. These are all the things that are swirling inside of us. And then I realize, okay, wait a second. Now, how much gold is the company missing out on?
mm,
Because they're not hearing all the creativity and ingenuity from their teams. And so it just keeps rippling throughout the company because now innovation is stagnated, which
mhm,
is eventually going to impact our bottom line. Not to mention, if our people are overperforming and overworking and having to prove themselves because they're so hard on themselves, now they're burning out, they're overwhelmed. Now we're calling out sick. So now absenteeism goes up, productivity goes down. So yeah, that's where this um, kind of in like kind of what's the word I want to use? This perspective came from that as humans, I got to see across nations that we're really hard on ourselves, and it's holding us
mm,
back mentally, relationally,
mm,
financially. Many times we're leaving money on the table because we're not negotiating our worth because we're so hard on ourselves. We don't believe that we're worthy, or we're not going out for that stretch project or going for that promotion. We're not negotiating. So, yeah, it's so far reaching because we're in relationship to everything, including ourselves.
absolutely. I appreciate that it sounds like there's a personal aspect of like, I need this for my professional journey of showing up in my authenticity, but also culturally in organizations, there's a need for this book. Hoping all the organizations that are here are going to look into this because we're talking about creating safe working environments where people feel psychologically safe enough and they have conditions that allow for trust to build and for their full selves to show up. So, a lot of the things you named, imposter syndrome, not belonging, productivity, yeah, those are internal, but they are also determined sometimes by external forces that can either create the space for it or shut the space down for it.
Yes. So that's why I say forgiveness is good business, right? When we're creating a more forgiving culture, it doesn't mean we're letting things slide and we're lowering our standards. That's not what we mean. It's a culture, as you said, where people feel psychologically safe to show up fully, to do meaningful work, where you see collaboration, as you said, and trust, high trust, that we're not holding on to resources because we're feeling resentful towards that team. And now we're delaying that project, for example. You can
Mm,
see how this can be a real invisible blockage, right?
absolutely.
And there is a cost to it.
Hmm.
There's actually a company, it's an organization in the UK. It's called Mercy Care, who actually has operationalized this concept into their business.
Wow. And what do they do? What is the business?
Yes, so they're one of the largest mental health organizations in the UK,
Okay.
and they shifted from a punitive
Mhm.
approach to one of just and learning, is what they call it. But foundationally within that is creating this more forgiving culture where how we approach mistakes and failures is now with compassion. Yes,
Mm,
accountability. That's the difference. It's not saying we're letting people off the hook. There is accountability, but we're also approaching it with compassion. We're now going
mm,
from, you know, who did this, right? From blame game and fault finding, because that's really
right.
what
And
forgiveness
that's a
is,
shaming way.
right? To what was missing.
Mm. And again, like the way that you frame this is so important because I think oftentimes we look at restorative approaches as the reactive behavior after harm is caused. But it sounds like if organizations are using this as a tool, they are actually proactively creating the culture that creates this space where people are making it's part of the practice of humanity in a workspace. And what a difference that makes. Like you said, forgiveness is good business
And it
in the
was,
bottom line.
yes, and it was tangible. So it was one of the, rare opportunities to see now on a long term that they're seeing the fruits of making this shift, where they
Mm,
saw a 2.5 million pound cost savings
mm.
because they had less turnover, less absenteeism, more productivity. Actually, even cases reported went up because they felt safe.
What a difference, right? Who would know, right? Why we know this and we know we want this, but it is so fascinating to me how until we bring it to the surface, people don't realize that they have the ability to create or break that and take ownership for it. It's fascinating to me that that's not present. I've worked in spaces where I've seen this happen time and time again, right? But I love that this company, Mercy, took took the self-reflective space because it requires self-reflection, even organizational self-reflection, not just individual self-reflection, which is another layer of empowerment and truly examining practices, it sounds like, to be able to shift those daily decisions, daily interactions, and daily conditions.
Yes. Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, I love it. I think this is fantastic. I think this is an excellent segue for a quick commercial that we're going to have to open up the course that I have created, which is very much aligned to, I think, everything we're talking about today in how we unlearn our socialization in all the ways that it impacts us personally, professionally, and in organizational culture by identifying some of those patterns. So we're going to take a moment, take a break, and watch a video, and then we'll come back and I'll tell you a little bit about my course, which I hope you get to join us in.
Love that.
We all hold on to stories that shape the choices we make, the paths we walk, and the outcomes we live through. This is mine. I was 22 years old, a junior in college, when life shifted in a way I never expected. One day I was carefree, studying, working, going out with friends, and the next, I found out I was pregnant. It was 2000. I was in a loose relationship with a man 8 years older, someone in a position of power over me at work. When I told him, he disappeared. At the same time, I had to face my family, faithful Muslims who were respected leaders in our community. I was the first girl to become pregnant out of wedlock, and I chose to keep my child. It wasn't easy. I faced judgment and rejection, but something deep inside me knew I wanted to be a mother. I carried my son, finished school, and began to recognize my strength. But when his father returned after 6 months, I forgot that strength. I longed for love, for care, for the family I thought I was supposed to have. And so in 2001, I married him. I told myself it was for love, for family, to silence the shame. What I didn't know was that I was stepping into 17 years of slowly losing myself. I had 3 more children in that marriage, and with each year, each compromise, each dimmed light inside me, I convinced myself this was love, that if I stayed, worked harder, forgave more, it would get better. But the truth was, my spirit was breaking. Then came 2018. My daughter was growing, watching me, and I realized I could not model for her a woman I did not respect. I could not teach my boys resilience while accepting harm as normal. I had to interrupt the story, for them and for me. After 17 years, I left. At first, I thought leaving was the end of the story, the freedom I had been waiting for. But what I found was that leaving was only the beginning. To heal, I started writing. I began sharing lessons about self-awareness, parenting, family, and unraveling the impacts of harm. Later, I launched my podcast, Pain to Power, reminding myself and others that healing is a choice. It wasn't easy. My children resisted, but over time, through love, patience, and the tools I built, we found our way back to each other. Now, after years of work, my 4 children and I stand together in love and truth, with even more added to our family. This is why I created this course, because healing is not just about leaving, it's about coming home to yourself. So today, as you begin this journey with me, I invite you to take one aspect of your own story, hold it gently, look at it with honesty, and together we'll begin the work of reframing it. Not to erase the past, but to find power in it. This is the journey back home to ourselves. Core friends of the course Empowerment Unlocked, where we will spend 5 weeks unlocking your power through examining what's the story that you've held on to, what is the socialization that has come from family, from community, from the environments that you're in, and the messages that you've retained, and how do you start to reclaim and reframe them. So join me. I am currently in my first session with my cohort, and we're doing amazing conversations, but I will be having new sessions in November. Stay tuned. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and you will hear more about the next dates launching in November. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dionne. And, your book is so powerful, but it sounds like maybe it's led you into speaking quite a bit. One in particular is you have a very exciting speaking engagement at the Shift 2.0 conference. And I would love to learn more about just what brought you to the conference itself and what we're going to gain from hearing you speak there.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited, even the way this all came together, because it was a dear friend who's also in the coaching space. I've actually worked with her on a couple of her retreats. She was part of the program that I actually went through when I was going through my coaching program.
Love that.
And when she heard what the theme was this year for the conference, which was light,
Mm.
Nogi, who is the founder of the Shift 2.0, every year she is led to a theme spiritually. And so she said, "You've got to meet Dionne." And so Nogi
Mm.
didn't know anything about me at the time. She's like, and all she knew was something about forgiveness. What does that have to do with light? So it was a very powerful experience when I met with her, to hear how she was led to this theme, how she got confirmation that this was the theme she was supposed to move forward with in terms of forgiveness, because, well, light, and how it connected to forgiveness. Because I said to her, well, one, we emanate so much more light every time we're able to release
Mm.
the negative emotions, those hard emotions. Not to mention, we just travel lighter.
Mm.
We can
Mm.
unload those heavy 1,000-pound weights of forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
So that's how we ended up coming together. And
I
she
Yeah.
shared, isn't that cool? And
That is beautiful.
shared, she said, "Dionne, I wasn't quite sure at the time, but I went to a luncheon not long after our mutual friend mentioned you. And at the end of the luncheon, they got a flyer about forgiveness."
Ah,
So that's how,
wow.
yeah.
Wait, and okay, so since we're there, can we
Mhm.
go into your story? Because I feel that's an excellent, excellent segue into how you became the coach itself and you knew this was your calling. Because that is a very serendipitous moment, right? And I am so glad that sometimes it's funny how we don't see our connections. Often people say to me, "Are you sure I'm supposed to be on your show?" Right? I think Nogi even, right? Like, what am I going to talk about? I'm like, no, you have a story. Like, you have a story, and this is where it needs to be shared, right? So sometimes we have to show people what they might not see is those connections, and that what a beautiful way. And for her to get that message, that spiritual message. And Nogi was a guest on the show just a few weeks ago, so many of my guests here should have did see her, but there is a segue of how you became a coach right there in your own story of serendipity. So tell us a little bit about that journey for you.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I was working in women's luxury fashion. That was the dream when both my son's father and I had left our small town to move to the Big Apple, right? Him to work on Wall Street and for me to work on Fifth Ave. And to get to do that for luxury European houses, traveling to Italy and to France and to Paris. That's one of my favorite places in the world, to Germany. From the outside looking in, I'm living the dream, free clothes, and we were building a life together.
Mhm.
And as I said, right around 40, I was approaching 40, I felt like there was more I was being called to do
Mm.
when this transition would happen, this separation, right? And so now I'm beginning this purpose search. And just around that time is actually, there was a couple years between, the separation and me beginning that purpose journey. But right around that time, I was thinking about becoming a kindergarten school teacher.
Mhm.
I love when my son was that age, when they're just a sponge and eager
They're
to
so
learn.
cute. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm not kidding. I feel like it was either that same day within that week when my son's father, like I said, we're not together anymore at this point, reaches out to me and says, "Dionne, I want to launch a financial literacy youth program. Will you help me?" And I'm like, whoa, this is still educating. It's still empowering the next generation, just in a different
Mhm.
way. So that was one of my first lessons, right? So for all,
Mhm.
right, have a plan, but leave room.
That's the truth, right?
Yeah,
Let the universe take you where it's supposed to go within it.
exactly. Because our gifts don't always come packaged exactly the way we expect them to. So stay open. And I was like, okay, but at the end of the day, it's still my ex. I had to take a moment to think about it. I
Mm.
ended up going for it.
Mm.
And we ended up launching the nonprofit, creating the curriculum. Now we're going into under-resourced areas, into high schools and youth nonprofits to basically give them the leg up, right? Give them the blueprint that we didn't have. And so we're going along and we're making impact throughout the tri-state area. We're based in New York. Next thing you know, we get signed to a network. We launched a podcast because the teachers, the administrators, they wanted to learn this stuff. So we said, how do we get to more people? So now we're reaching not only thousands around New York, but now around the world. All because I said yes and I chose forgiveness. So, okay,
Mm.
next thing you know, we get signed to the network. Now we're getting sponsors. Before you know it, we're actually being asked to now go back to our small town and teach this program at his alma mater, where we
Wow.
grew up. It was a 6-month engagement. Um, Now we're flying back and forth, and that's where I actually ended up reconciling with my father, who I'd been estranged from for over 30 years. So this is,
Mm.
I could keep going. This is just a part of my testimony. Then my son would meet his grandfather at 13, all because I
Mm.
keep saying yes and choosing forgiveness. But I bring all this up to say that this is why I'm so fired up in bringing this message of forgiveness wherever I can, because of the not only the healing that I experienced, but the generational healing that is happening, not to mention the exponential impact that we are having because we decided to rewrite our legacy and put good into the
Mm.
world.
Mm. That part right there, put good into the world, right? And it's coming back. And so you said yes and you chose forgiveness, and it's like the world opened up and all these different opportunities and pathways started. Was there a particular moment where you realized I need to coach people in this?
Oh, well, how many of us found our voice during the pandemic? How many of us birthed right in that
Yes.
incubator, if you will, that
Right? The
quiet.
many, everybody on the show
Oh,
at some point.
yes, yes, in that stillness, in that silence, I kept hearing, I am a woman of faith, right? I kept hearing, I felt like God was nudging me to share my story.
Mm.
And who wants to talk about infidelity and betrayal? I mean, there's so much shame around that,
It's hard.
right?
Yeah.
So I ran from it, for a good while. That was 2020. It wasn't until about 2022. I remember it was September of 2022 where I was actually at a women's retreat. It was a faith-based retreat. Um, 40 women, as I mentioned. We were actually divided into, I think it was 5 groups, right?
Mhm.
And there was an activity. Now, I should just rewind a little bit. I did end up sharing my story one-on-one with one of the women there because it felt like it would have supported her in the moment, right? Just so happens someone else, another young lady, overheard our conversation. And she said, I couldn't help overhearing what you were sharing about your personal story and journey around forgiveness. This is what I'm going through. So that next day, we were doing our quiet time and reflection around the pool. And I ended up, quote unquote, ministering to this young lady in a way that I just felt like an out of body experience. It just felt like I was in my
Mm.
element as I'm
Mm.
sharing and coaching and supporting her, where she really did have a breakthrough in that moment. So again, there was another little God wink, if you will. Later that day, we would have this activity where we'd be broken up into groups, and they prayed over these keys, and each key had a word attached to it. Remember, I said 40 women, and we all had to go up. Each individual group went up and would pull a key out of their respective chest. 40 women, and
Mhm.
I would pick the forgiveness key.
Wow.
I mean, I couldn't run anymore. I said,
It was calling, it was pulling you in.
today was the day. So part of the exercise was to share why that word was meaningful to you with the entire group. And so it was in that moment that I declared that I would create a program. And that was September of 2022. By December, I had completed the program, and I don't think there was much time in between when I completed creating the program and I got a call from one of my dear best friends who said, Dionne, we need you. It's funny how life works, right? The minute you step out, the universe, God, everything conspires. Called to go and support her and her mom group. They've been friends forever. Since their kids were young, now they're in college, but they realize now every time they're getting together, all they're doing is venting and complaining about either their ex or their co-parent, or they're still harboring stuff towards their parents. Now all these ladies are, in their 40s, mid 40s, so they've been through some life,
We accumulate a lot of people to have to forgive, right?
Right? So she said, Dionne, every year we do a little Christmas gathering at one of our houses. Would you actually do your workshop for us? And that was when I realized, just the way they really receptive to the content. I knew I was onto something. And the rest is history. The rest is history. Now I speak on international stages. Now, I mean, my book has been, chosen by the military as a learning and development tool. The Royal Bahama Defense Force used my book for training their elite troops. And that's going to trickle down.
How transformational for them, first of all, to make that decision. I'm so glad. But wow for you too, right? Like the fact that that's what they saw, you were able to make that clear in an organization we don't often align with forgiveness, nor humanity as the center of the work, right?
Yes, thank you for that reflection, right? The most unlikely places, the government of Canada, right? Like, come on. But what do we know? People are everywhere. People are peopling. Doesn't matter if we're in corporate, doesn't matter if we're in the church. We all need to learn what I call this leadership superpower. Because we're leaders no matter where we are, at home, at work, in our communities. We need this.
I love that you just said that. We are all leaders, right? We all have a sphere of influence. We all have a locus of control that we can, make an impact in. Absolutely. And I want to say, I appreciate that you keep saying, that so much of this is, we're so in alignment, like it is wild how much down to the dates, I was 40 when I left my marriage. In 2020 was when I started writing, and 2022 is when I started this show. So your dates and your ages, like it was all aligning in my life. But even just recently, right? This is faith. This is the universe. I just was doing a post about this idea of divine timing, and that divine timing requires us to let go of control, let go of the story we're trying to create, and embrace the story that's possible, right? And that it will come. As soon as we let go, it will come. Which is such a beautiful thing. And all of this is leading you to being at Shift 2.0, which I will be at too. And I am so excited to see you in person. And I encourage everyone to go and get their tickets. If you haven't done it yet, go get your ticket and be there, because there are some powerful women that are going to be speaking, and wonderful networking. What is it that all of these amazing women coming together in one space are going to know better and walk away with in Shift 2.0 from coming to hear Dionne Nicholls-Germaine speak on forgiveness?
Yes. Well, one thing I always say, I'm not just coming to inspire people about forgiveness. I make it actionable, practical, and I actually give you a way forward. So that's one. Two, and this is huge, because going back to our very initial conversation, our opening of this conversation, what gets in the way of forgiveness? We got to break that down. The name of the conference is The Shift. And that's what I want to do for these women, is shift how they are relating to forgiveness. Not from a place of fear or victimhood, but one of empowerment. I teach forgiveness as a tool of empowerment. I say that forgiveness is one of the highest forms of personal transformation. Who you become on the other side of forgiveness is unrecognizable. That's what I want them to leave with.
Whew. That is transformational shifts for individuals to make, and I think it's going to pull a lot of people who are holding on to things that are limiting their light, as you said, right? And I what a gift to be able to hear you speaking about it. I love that. Love it.
Thank you. It's truly an honor every time I get to share. I get to do this.
And it is such an opportunity to be in a space where you're sharing, because I can tell you, I have only spoken to you now twice. And I am walking away with these pieces of my own journey in a new view of what needs to shift. And I've been shifting for 5 years, for a long time, but every opportunity we have, we learn something new, a new tool, a new way. And Shift 2.0 is going to give us a lot of those. So definitely, please make sure you get your tickets. Please make sure you are there, and go get the book. I can't wait. I'm getting this book because I am in this space. I am ready. I am ready to be lighter. I love it. I want to come back because I posted this in my Instagram story because I saw it on your page. But you talk about the idea of I wrote it down, so I'm going to get my notes out because you talk about that the holding on to a grudge is like holding on to the what is it, the screenshots that we don't need, right? Like, and I love that connection to the idea of its baggage. Sometimes we don't realize the baggage we're carrying is something that we don't always have to. Like, we really can let go of that.
Yeah. And I had to do a youth leadership summit.
Oh, I love
And so
that.
I connect with the young
What a
people.
way to connect with the youth, because that's for certain something, right? I had to look for all my notes because I'm like, it wasn't right in my head, but they know screenshots.
Yes, they know about screenshots and how that slows down your phone. And so I was relating to how that impacts us and weighs us down, and slows us down, because we are holding on to this stuff that we don't need anymore. We don't need to keep replaying these images. They were a chapter in our book. They don't have to be our whole story.
They don't have to be our old story. And when you make the shifts, you change the story. That's what we're going to do. And that's what we're doing at Shift 2.0. And that's what we're doing in Empowerment Unlocked. So please make sure that you are staying tuned for this November session with a new cohort and signing up. I love it. Kevin Guinea says, I had to get a backup drive for my screenshots, LOL, right? Because they block us for certain.
Yes.
And Kevin has been on this journey with me in Substack, sharing his story. So I appreciate him coming in. And thank you to everyone. Thank you so much, Dionne. This was a beautiful conversation. So before we go, I know we're going to see a Shift 2.0, but where else can people follow you? What do you have that you want to let us know about in addition to the conference?
Yeah, so you can always go to my website, liveyourbestlifeforyou.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I encourage you to subscribe to my newsletter for the Forgiveness Edge, where you can get some regular content to feed you every bi-weekly. Instagram, Facebook, at Dionne Nicholls. And what's coming? Oh, my book on Amazon. And if you are an organization getting ready for corporate gifting, consider a gift that keeps on giving, one that actually is going to help your leaders grow, expand in their leadership capacity. So my book is available for corporate gifting. Just email me at Dionne at liveyourbestlifeforyou.com.
Mm. I love that. Please make sure you do. All the links are also, I know I saw them in the chat, but they're also in this description on YouTube. And if you haven't done it yet, which I don't know why you haven't, subscribe, hit the like, leave a comment, share what resonated with you. I know Dionne gave us some serious gems and lots of ways to start making these small shifts and conquer those fears and those egos and start forgiving to feel lighter. Thank you again so much, Dionne. And please remember, friends, I am really in this space where these little shifts are going to start to heal us. And when we heal, we show up in our authenticity. And when we show up in our authenticity, we bring that light to everyone else. And that is the goal of Pain to Power. That is the goal of all of the work that we are both doing here and of the iRant network and all of the shows on here. So please make sure that you tune in every Sunday at 8 p.m. on this channel for Brown Girl Interrupting for Pain to Power and more dynamic guests. Go and follow Dionne, learn from her, sign up for that newsletter. I am signing up for the newsletter and ready to start my shift because, yeah, forgiveness. It really is powerful. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me. This was such a beautiful experience. And congratulations on the new course. And I can't wait to hear how your forgiveness journey, goes.
Thank you. I look forward to starting it and learning from it. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone. Please make sure, again, you subscribe, like, comment, share, and pass this along to anyone else who is ready to get the tools to heal and learn and grow in community. Peace, love, and light.